Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
And this is issue number 28, our Halloween-centered episode. Ooh, spooky. I'm just going to get this right out of the way. I hate Halloween. I think it's ridiculous.
Whoa.
It needs to be said, man. I'm sure for everybody who likes to celebrate October 31st with the candy and the costumes and the spooky, the witches, the cats, the brooms, the pumpkins, the ghosts, the whole spooky thing, that's all well and good for you people. I can't stand it. It's a waste of a holiday. It's a quote unquote holiday.
I'm flabbergasted.
It's ridiculous.
I'm flabbergasted. I didn't know this about you, to be honest. How long have you felt this way?
A long, long time. It's a waste of a holiday. It's pointless, and I'm sure we're probably losing listeners as we speak. But
direct all of your hate mail to Anthony Sitko, not to Dr. Issues, not to Capes on the Couch. Oh my gosh! Wow.
It's stupid. See, here's the thing. When I was a kid, my mother, and she's the one responsible for this. I'm going to put it on my mother. I love you, Mom. I appreciate the fact that you're a patron, but I'm going to blame you. No, but it's the truth. She thought that Halloween was stupid. And she would say, like, if you want candy, I will buy you the candy. If that's what you want, you can have the candy. I'm not going to spend $30, $40 on a costume so you can walk around the neighborhood for several hours and get candy from strangers and et cetera, and then come home and I have to worry about, oh, you don't like this candy, you don't like that candy. Half it gets thrown in the garbage anyway because it's stuff that I wouldn't like or didn't eat or my parents wouldn't eat. So my mom's like, listen, you want the candy corn and the Raisinets and your Crunch Bars and your Snickers and everything?
Hold on. No one wants candy corn.
I want candy corn. That is the only positive thing about Halloween is that candy corn is everywhere. That's the only upside to Halloween. And in fact, I'll go so far as to say that's one of the few positive things about fall in general. I hate fall as a season. Fall brings me candy corn and apple cider, and that's it. And football and hockey. But so sports and candy corn and apple cider. Those are the good things about fall. Everything else, give me summer, 6 days a week and twice on Sundays.
While I agree with you on the season, I'm not sure I can agree with you with any other statement that you've made up to this point. So I'm going to completely ignore it, and we're going to deal with the Green Goblin.
Yes.
Please.
Okay, that's a fair point. I needed to get it off my chest, and I said in the last episode that at some point we were going to get into my feelings on Halloween, and it needed to be said. You know me. You know I'm very much a person who does not hold things in. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and I am very open and honest about my feelings. And I hate Halloween, and it's ridiculous. But Halloween is the reason why we are doing this week's character of Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin. So before we get started real fast, I just want to let everybody know, if you really love Halloween, or if you love fall, or you want to direct your hate mail or viewer, listener opinions otherwise, you can send them to our email address, capesonthecouch@gmail.com. We have a Twitter account, Capes on the Couch. I'm very active. I'm constantly saying, oh, hey, you're looking for podcast recommendations? Check out our show. Check out this show. I've been listening to our friends over at Popcorn Psychology. We're very excited. Our episode on The Incredible Hulk will be coming up in December. So we have just finished scheduling that. So we're very much looking forward to doing that. We're going to be on their show. They're going to be on ours. It's going to be a big whole conglomeration of shows, entertainment, and psychiatry and psychology. And then there's me.
Don't sell yourself short.
We have all of these trained professionals in the room, and then there's this schmuck with a microphone who just likes comics.
I love the fact that you completely ignore that you are a major driving force as to why we're doing this. You're ignoring the fact that you are incredibly articulate when it comes to society at large. You are deciding for some reason to not give yourself credit for putting out one of the most emotional blog posts that I can remember for any reason at any point. and you are excellent when it comes to anything involving radio. So despite all of those positives, you focused on the one lacking point.
Because one of my greatest strengths is my self-deprecating humor. I am nothing if not self-deprecating. So that is part and parcel of the whole package that is me.
Fair enough. And I think that's why we're such good friends, because I, too, enjoy self-deprecating humor. Why else would I subject myself to getting tortured by so many comic book characters every week?
I thought you were going to say you also enjoy making fun of me. And that's why we're friends. I was like, I enjoy making fun of myself. Yes, I enjoy making fun of you, too. Well, then there you go.
Yeah, but see,
it's like that Reddit comment. I also choose this guy's dead wife.
Oh, wow.
We've completely gone off the rails.
Are we trying to build
and we're
this,
like 3 minutes into the episode, and we're already just completely make a hard left turn here. As I was saying, we have a very active Twitter account, Capes on the Couch. I also have a personal Twitter account, Anthony Sitko, and Doc has Doc Issues as his Twitter account. So if you want to direct your pro-Halloween vent at me and tell me why you think it's the greatest holiday since Arbor Day, then, please at me, at Anthony Sitko, or you can send us email at capesonthecouch@gmail.com. In all sincerity, we love listener feedback. We do appreciate getting emails and tweets and responses, messages on our Facebook page. We also have the Facebook page, facebook.com/capesonthecouch. And we have a Patreon, patreon.com/capesonthecouch. You can subscribe at the $1, $3, $5, and $10 levels. $1 gets you a shout out and our eternal thanks. $3 gets you early access and the availability to download a blooper reel every month. $5 gets you access to a longer uncensored version of our skit every week. And also, if you are a $5 patron, if you have any questions about any of the characters we have coming up, you send us your questions and we guarantee that we will answer them in the episode. And if you're a $10 patron, of which we have 2, and there is still 1 slot available, you can select a character every month for us to do, and we will answer any and all questions about that character. So one of our president level patrons, Brian, a good friend of ours, selected for next week, we're going to be doing Wolverine.
Ooh.
That's a big one. That's probably going to be about an hour and a half long episode, I feel, because Logan has been involved in every X-Men event basically since 1980 something. And also he's got a slew of issues. So that one is going to be lengthy. We're going to try not to get bogged down into a geek history lesson level background on that, because frankly, we could do 3 hours just on Logan's background without even touching his issues. On a side note, if you like learning about interesting and comic book characters, etc., check out Geek History Podcast or Geek History Lesson. I apologize. Geek History Lesson. They're an awesome podcast. So that one is going to be coming up next week. The week after that, our other president level patron, Matt, has asked us to do Molecule Man, Owen Reese.
Not bad.
Yeah, he kind of he went deep on that one, although he was a major part of the Secret Wars event. So right. Molecule Man has been around for quite some time. And then the following week, Dr. Stephen Strange.
How on earth did we get someone like Stephen Strange as a character at this point? It's almost as if someone randomly asked for it. It was my daughter.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure we just asked your daughter, who do you want us to do on the next episode? And she just said, Dr. Strange. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
That's how it came up. We appreciate the input. But this week, Norman Osborn, to tie in with the nonsense holiday of Halloween, the Green Goblin. I'm sorry, it's just, I have to spend all this money giving candy to these little kids that don't even bother ringing the doorbell, or they ring the doorbell and they don't even bother saying trick or treat. At least if we have to participate in this facade, you're going to go through the whole thing, okay? I want to see an awesome costume. I want to hear you say trick or treat, and I want you to say thank you when I put my little fun-sized Snickers or Milky Way bar in your bag, you greedy little bastards.
Wow. I don't know what to say to any of this. Kids like dressing up. Kids like doing fun things. Why do you hate fun?
And of course, I'm fully aware, I cosplay when I go to Comic-Con. But I don't expect people to give me candy for it. I mean, it'd be nice, but I don't do it as part of some, whatever. I realize I'm a total hypocrite. Okay. I understand that.
Right, because you don't ask for candy, but you sure do ask for autographs.
No, I don't ask for them.
You pay for them.
Well, no, I ask comic book creators for their autographs. I don't ask for autographs. I don't say to people, "Oh, I want to give you my autograph."
Oh, okay.
That's not why I dress up.
Oh, okay.
And I don't dress up so that comic creators will give me their autograph.
Are you sure about that last part? I challenge that. But you know what? This is going to be the worst digressing episode so far that we've ever done. So
and we did Deadpool.
Right. So to get back to Norman Osborn.
Okay, fine. I'll get into Norman Osborn in the substantive part of the podcast. Just maybe I'll release as part of the Patreon or as an added bonus. I'll just do like a full unhinged rant on Halloween.
We've got a blog. Just write it.
Yeah, but it's fun if I can get into it because you can hear the venom and the vitriol in my voice.
I'll let you do that on your own time then.
Thank you. So Norman Osborn, the Green Goblin, was created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko in Amazing Spider-Man number 14, July 1964. Originally, he was just introduced as the Green Goblin, and we didn't know who he was. And he was going after Spider-Man. And then there was apparently a discussion and a debate between Lee and Ditko as to who the Goblin was going to be.
Wait, you're saying Ditko was involved in a debate?
I'm also saying that Stan Lee doesn't have a full memory of exactly what it was that happened. I know, you're shocked. I know you're completely stunned that Steve Ditko was involved in a debate about one of his characters, and you're also equally shocked that Stan Lee doesn't remember exactly how things went down when it came to the discussion of some of his creations.
Yep, that's par for the course.
Yep. So it was later revealed, several issues later, I should say, that the Green Goblin was Norman Osborn, father of Peter Parker's best friend and classmate, Harry Osborn.
Wow, what a twist.
What a twist. So Norman Osborn is the head of Oscorp, which is a chemical company. He discovered a secret formula that was created by his former business partner, Mendell Stromm, who was kicked out of the company for embezzling. So Norman finds this formula and he attempts to recreate it, but it explodes in his face, driving him insane. Now, one version of that story involves Harry messing with the chemical formula because he was annoyed that Norman wasn't actually being a father to him. Yeah. But that's one version of the telling. Basically, I think at the time it was just he tried to recreate the formula and it literally blew up in his face. And the ensuing explosion gave him some of the super strength, but it also made him crazy.
Yeah, this reminds me of a CEO story. If anybody remembers Neutron Jack Welch, he was the CEO of GE. He was an engineer, and one of the things that happened before he became CEO was he almost blew up one of the chemical plants because of a mistake that he made. So I realized, wow, I wonder if that's where they got that idea from, because that's way too spot on. You don't get to be the head of a major company despite making that sort of mistake unless you've got a lot of talent. So someone like him, Norman, I wonder.
I never heard that story before.
Yeah, there's an autobiography on the guy. I mean, he's fascinating, and he's considered one of the best executives ever in terms of American capitalism. But he wasn't above his faults, and that's a pretty big fault.
I would say so. So Norman, as Goblin, decides to become a crime boss in New York City, and he chooses Spider-Man as his nemesis because of all the heroes in New York, you could swing a dead cat in New York City and hit a costume vigilante of some kind.
Oh, boy, there's a black cat joke in there somewhere.
There absolutely is, but I'm just going to walk right over that one. Norman is unsuccessful in several attempts to defeat him. So then he later comes to learn of Spider-Man's real identity, that he's Peter Parker, a classmate of his son Harry, and he attacks him. In the ensuing battle, I'm not going to get into all the details. In the ensuing battle, Norman gets hit with electric wires and it gives him amnesia. And he forgets the whole thing.
Once again, there is some reference to that. If someone gets electroconvulsive therapy, the number one side effect is short-term memory loss. Maybe not total amnesia, but you get the idea.
Peter destroys the costume and uses this opportunity to start over again with his relationship with Norman because he is his best friend's father. Norman regains his memories and loses them and regains them. It happens a couple of times. It's comics. So he kidnaps Gwen Stacy, and during the rescue attempt, Gwen Stacy dies. I know, 40-year spoiler alert. Peter, driven by rage, nearly beats Norman to death, but Norman ends up impaled by his own glider. Then we come to find out, so Norman Osborn is dead. Or is he? Dun, dun, dun.
Right.
If he was dead, I don't think we'd be doing the episode on him.
Uh-huh.
The Goblin formula gave him a healing factor, which apparently allows him to resurrect himself. So he breaks out of the morgue, and he goes to Europe to be with the illegitimate children that he fathered with Gwen Stacy before he killed her.
Oh, why? Why go down this road?
This is a much later retcon. This is a J. Michael Straczynski story, and
surprise,
he was sleeping with Gwen Stacy before he killed her, and that's why he kidnapped her, because she didn't want to raise the children with Norman, and she was going to tell them that Peter was their father. I don't know. I didn't make up the story. In any event.
Wait, does that mean that there would have been some concern that Norman would be green with envy if they were raised by Peter?
Get out.
Wait, so you can make a whole dead Gwen Stacy joke and I can't make a very simple, like, dad pun? Really?
Get out. I'm operating the mic. No, just kidding. Norman Osborn is responsible for orchestrating the Clone Saga. Not going to get into that.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll do Ben Reilly at a later time, but we're not recapping the Clone Saga.
Uh-huh.
So he returns to the public eye, and he's in control of Oscorp. And he buys the Daily Bugle. And this is kind of a fun storyline because he proceeds to torment J. Jonah Jameson, Ben Urich, and Peter Parker, Spider-Man. So he uses a stand-in as the Goblin for a period of time because he's the respectable businessman, and he doesn't have time to go do the Goblin stuff. So he has a stand-in be the Goblin for him. Yep. But he, in his capacity as Norman Osborn and as the head of Oscorp and owner of the Bugle, makes the lives of basically everyone miserable because Urich had outed him as the Goblin previously or made numerous statements regarding him as the Goblin. Jameson printed the articles and Peter Parker took the pictures.
Yep.
Later, Norman joins a cult, the Gathering of Five. He receives the gift of insanity, and he's defeated by Spider-Man once again. Then he goes after Jessica Jones after she helps reveal that Osborn is the Goblin again, because people have very short-term memories.
Wait. You're saying that Norman Osborn and the Green Goblin are somehow connected? Just want to make sure I got that right.
So he's defeated by Luke Cage this time. Because he threatens Jessica and the unborn Danielle.
Yeah, and if you want to know why Jessica Jones really is good at her job and why she doesn't focus as much on her superpowers, you can check out that episode.
Yes, exactly. We did her. We did an episode on her. As soon as I said it, I realized how it sounded. We did an episode on Jessica Jones. So now he's in prison. He masterminds a plan to go after Spider-Man with the Sinister 12. So he creates a team of villains, but they were countered by S.H.I.E.L.D. and other heroes in collaboration.
This says a lot about Norman Osborn because you just mentioned Sinister 12. Why not the original Sinister 6? Well, because he didn't want to be involved with the Sinister Six because he would have had to admit that other people were necessary to get rid of Spider-Man when he felt at the time he could do it by himself. But once he realized he might want some help, he decided if you're going to do it, go big.
Go big or go home. Then, in the Civil War story, Norman Osborn gets put in charge of the Thunderbolts, a team of reformed villains who have to bring in unregistered heroes. How the hell, after everything that Norman Osborn has done, does this man get put in charge of a team with this kind of power and authority?
You know what?
I know we're going to get into that later.
But it says a lot about what kind of talent people see in him. Well, yeah, we'll deal with that later.
So, Norman Osborn has this team of former villains, and they're supposed to go after heroes who have refused to register under the, registration initiative. And what does he do with it? Oh, I need you to go after Spider-Man. I need you to bring in and or kill Spider-Man.
Hey, he's the boss.
Then in the Secret Invasion storyline, he kills the Skrull Queen Varanki and uses this leverage because now everybody's very happy that Varanki is dead. And it was a public shooting. So everybody goes, hey, Norman Osborn saved us. So he uses this to gain control of Hammer, which is another one of those big multinational organizations in control of things. Hammer, I don't think the acronym was ever revealed.
No.
Much like S.H.I.E.L.D. Hammer, it was just, it's all caps with the periods, but they never explain what Hammer actually stands for. He creates the Dark Avengers until that falls apart. I'm not going to, again, it's another thing like the Thunderbolts. It's former villains. They're pretending to be heroes. At one point, he becomes the Iron Patriot, which if you saw the Iron Man movies in the MCU, they touch on that. It's very similar, the appearance, certainly if not the person behind it. So then during the Siege storyline, Norman Osborn, under the influence of Loki, attacks Asgard, which is floating over Braxton, Oklahoma.
Right.
Like you do.
That still doesn't make sense. When we did the Loki episode, it didn't make sense then. It doesn't make sense now.
And when we talked about the Sentry episode, it didn't make sense then because Norman manipulates Sentry into being his lackey, except Sentry, because he's bug nut crazy, turns into the Void and he destroys Asgard. And Osborn becomes driven mad by this. And at one point, he believes that the Void is actually the Angel of Death.
In terms of the amount of destruction possible, he wasn't that far off. But also, it speaks well to the idea that someone like Loki is able to demonstrate an ability to manipulate someone as intelligent but psychotic as Osborn, who also is involved with someone like the Sentry, who also has humongous problems, and they basically succeed. They do a fantastic job of wrecking shop. It's impressive.
Unless you live in Braxton, Oklahoma.
Well, you know what? There are people that live, I'm sure, in Braxton, Oklahoma, so I'm not going to say anything disparaging.
So after that, Norman becomes the Goblin King, and he builds an army to attack the Superior Spider-Man, which is the body of Peter Parker with the mind of Otto Octavius, because Otto, on his deathbed, swapped his mind with Peter Parker, his greatest enemy. So Norman gets defeated by Peter Parker after he's given control of his body back by Otto because there was a portion of Peter's consciousness that was still residing within his body. And Otto realized that if he really wanted to be the Superior Spider-Man, he would give full control over to Peter Parker. And it's a great story, but I'm just not going to get into all of the details. I tried to sum it up as quickly as I could just there.
No, you did an excellent job doing that. And I'm not so sure it comes across as well as we would like when you describe it that way.
No, but in all seriousness, Superior Spider-Man was an amazing book.
Yeah.
And it was for as corny as it sounds, the execution was fantastic.
All right.
So after that, Norman steals the Carnage symbiote, which we discussed briefly when we did our Venom episode, which is all the way back on issue number 1, our very, very first one. I still haven't seen the Venom movie. Anyway. He steals the Carnage symbiote and becomes the Red Goblin, and he gets defeated by Spider-Man once again, and he's driven insane so that he believes Spider-Man is Norman Osborn, and Norman Osborn, is Cletus Cassidy, Carnage.
I know as a psychiatrist I should be talking about that. I'm not going to, because the coolest part about Red Goblin to me was the fact that besides the glider and everything else being created by the symbiote, he threw basically, I'll call them carnage bombs instead of pumpkin bombs. Like they could talk themselves. They bit people before they exploded. It was pretty cool to see. The artwork is pretty fantastic.
Nice. In the research, I couldn't read everything about Norman Osborn because he's been around literally for 50 years, and he's been involved in so many storylines. Even though he is a Spider-Man foe, first and foremost, he has managed to work his way through the Avengers and become just a widely known foe of heroes in general, because that's how devious he is and that's how scheming he is as a character, that he is willing to take out not just Spider-Man, but pretty much anyone who gets in his way.
Yeah, the best description I think I can summarize for Norman Osborn would be serious, crazy business. Or crazy, serious business. Or business that's serious and crazy? Okay, you get the point.
I think our listeners get the gist. And again, I could go on for another 20 minutes on all the stuff that Norman Osborn's been involved in, but let's move into the issues. I'm going to jump around a little bit because I want to bring it back to the question that I asked earlier, which is, how does this guy keep getting positions of authority even with his history? We've established, and it has been shown within the Marvel Universe, Norman Osborn is the Green Goblin. Whether you believe he's currently acting as the Green Goblin or not, it's well known that at various points he was operating as the Green Goblin. He created property damage. He was going after heroes. He killed people. And yet he was given charge of the Thunderbolts. And then just because he killed Varanki, he was put in charge of Hammer. And he basically became the head of national security for the United States, if not the planet.
Yep.
How does this guy keep failing upwards? Dare I say it's because he's a white man? But, if you really want to get into the socio-political climate of the whole thing, he's a cisgender, heterosexual white male, wealthy, He's about as privileged as they get, so he continues to fail upward. I don't think there's that context being read into it in the comics. I think it's just he's a sniveling, weaselly little bastard who manages to finagle his way into and out of trouble. But Doc, I'll let you, as the professional, speak on it.
Although that is a very simple way to summarize the problems that people would have with him having that type of power and that type of control, I don't think it's as simple as that. Because Norman Osborn has something that we all enjoy. He has talent. It's established very early on that even though his father was very rich, they lost a lot when he was young. That's established in the comics. So he did have to rebuild things. And it was well established that he got his college degrees, got an MBA. He was a very and clearly was a very intelligent man. So he did the work and people recognized it. He had something happen to him that was unfortunate and contributed to how he acts and responds to things, but it didn't take away those inherent abilities that he had taken time to develop as an adolescent into young adulthood and continued to carry on through his business career, however it went. So those things don't get erased because of all the other things that he's done. Now, should he have been given a pass because of this fantastic ability? Maybe not. But I think there are plenty of examples to get away from the nepotism of it all, where people who have inherent positive impacts with their own gifts, the things that they've put their time and sweat into, the 10,000 hours, whatever you want to call it, get chances over and over and over again, because all it takes is one person or one group to say, those previous times were bad, but just maybe we can recapture the goodness that we saw before. Everyone knows at this point, if you've listened to enough of our episodes, that I'm a boxing fan. Mike Tyson is the ultimate example of that. Age 20, wins heavyweight championship of the world. Youngest ever to do it. Absolute beast when it came to destroying people in the ring. He loses to Buster Douglas after having some dalliances, some huge mistakes, potentially criminal activity, sexual assaults. I'm not getting into innocence or guilt here, just pointing these things out. Loses to Buster Douglas, goes to prison after, some horrible things that happen, gets out. Never past that initial run did he have the same level of success that he did before. But because he was Iron Mike, baddest man on the planet, people gave him chance after chance after chance. Also using him because they wanted more money. But the point still stands. When people see incredible talent and it made them, to tie it into something I mentioned in the last episode, nostalgia bias, because at some point people saw something so impressive, they figured that, hey, it can happen again. Let's give it a chance. Might do a lot of damage, but hey, what about the positive side? Let's be optimistic. And what do you know? So far, when it comes to psychiatry and psychology, what we know is the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So when someone like Norman Osborn gets put in a position of power, after he's already demonstrated through the Green Goblin that he's going to manipulate and use that power for horrible intentions, people should have taken the hint and they didn't. Why? Because they put blinders on and said, hey, because there was this spark of something good happening, oh, we know he can do a lot more, so let's give him full reign. Not exactly a good decision. And I think there's something that we all could learn from that.
Absolutely. I'm not arguing that at all. I do think it's very interesting that you mentioned the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior, because that's something that was drilled into my head when I was a kid. If I had $1 for every time my mother used the term track record, I wouldn't be in any debt and I wouldn't have a mortgage and I wouldn't have had to be playing the the Mega Millions, $1.6 billion jackpot, because I probably have close to that amount myself just by the sheer number of times that I heard it. I think that's not entirely incorrect, but I also think it does a disservice to people who do have growth and change, because we know just from real life examples that people do in fact grow and change, and they can learn and become different and ostensibly better people. And I do recognize that it can go both ways, but I think in the comics, there's certainly no indication that Norman has ever experienced any kind of growth or maturity to make that kind of statement irrelevant.
Right. And to clarify, I don't think it's wrong to give people chances to do things in the future just because they did negative things in the past. But we're not talking about the idea that he's able to adjust his track record. It's that it gets thrown out almost wholesale for the sake of expecting a complete turnaround. There's no middle ground there. In other words, you wouldn't have someone who, let's say, was just in charge of a hedge fund and bilks people out of billions of dollars, and they go to jail for it. When they get out of jail, the first thought shouldn't be, okay, how do we help this guy turn his life around by making sure he's in charge of more billions of dollars? It should be, I wonder if there's a way that you could start to garner trust on a small level with other people over time so that they know that you're not going to swindle them out of all of their money. And yet that's what they did with Norman Osborn. They just jumped to the highest level without making any consideration for anything in between. That's ridiculous.
Well, that's comics. So I think that's basically the catch-all response or understanding of that. So early on in the comic history anyway, when Peter and Harry are younger and they're in high school, even into college, it's apparent that Norman treats Peter far better than he treats Harry. And this was done, I think, to some extent very well in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, particularly the first one and even the second one, where Norman was very encouraging of Peter and his scientific growth and studies. And Harry was just sort of the son that Norman forgot about. And I'm not even going to get into the whole illegitimate children with Gwen Stacy bit, because that didn't happen until much, much later in the comics, that it was retconned.
Thank you so much.
But what is it that drove Norman to be such an absentee father, given that his father was an alcoholic who drove himself to an early grave in the search for scientific pursuits? Norman is basically repeating history. You'd think he would have learned.
That brings it back to what we just discussed, right? What's the best predictor of future behavior? It's past behavior, provided that there's nothing else to intervene. Now, there's clearly going to be some genetic component to this as well. So there may be a predisposition, maybe not necessarily for the alcoholism, because that never really came up. But the idea that there are other things in life more important than blood relationships seems pretty clear for someone like Norman Osborn. Does that mean that he doesn't want relationships with other people? Clearly he does. And there's a part of this that I think doesn't just apply to him, but applies to many people in situations when it comes to how we treat the ones we get to choose versus the ones that we're born with. In other words, you don't pick your family. You get, pardon the language, you get the vaginal lottery, whatever it is. So if you were born in a certain location to a certain group of parents and a certain set of siblings in a certain socioeconomic circumstance, that's your lot for the time being, until there are other things that you can do to change it. As opposed to the idea that you can have other individuals that have none of those connections to you that ultimately you get to choose. Now, how they came into your life may be a random situation, but your interactions from there are totally under your control. Peter Parker is an outside person that clearly has certain talents and abilities that someone like Norman Osborn would respect, and he can see that for what it is and therefore continue to foster that relationship. It's basically I guess you could say, a form of networking, as opposed to I have, once again, the lottery ball that came out from the vaginal lottery, and I have to deal with this because that's what society expects. But I know all the ins and outs, all the warts, all the quirks, all the annoyances that this person has. And if I don't like it or it doesn't suit my standards, then I can always just pick and choose with this other person what I want at any given time. Because even if it didn't work out, I can just get rid of that. This one may permanently be tied by name or by association because of biology. But since I already know that's kind of a, how do I put it? Their potential is seen as limited because of all the information that Norman Osborn has ahead of time with Harry. Peter Parker, in theory, is the future draft pick, and he gets to mold it because of all the potential that he doesn't see. And it's really common for people to do this. It's not fair, but very standard.
Interesting. I guess I hadn't considered that that part of it with the potential. Certainly, I'm aware of the notion that you can pick certain people that you want to associate with, and if they are toxic, people can dissociate themselves from their parents or their children or siblings, what have you. It's just very unfortunate for Harry's life that from a young age, his father chose to concern himself with the pursuit of science more than concern himself with being a father, which is what Harry really needed.
Right. It was the timing of it, because clearly younger children are going to need way more input and influence. And not only that, that's the best opportunity. When you look at the actual time that parents spend with their children, it's the greatest amount when they're really young. After that, what's the influence that takes up most of their time? It's their peers. So,
school.
Right. It's teachers. It's people other than the parents. So once it gets to that point, you have limited control. And I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this in previous episodes. But the point stands. If he was, and by he, I should clarify, if Norman Osborn was the one that wanted to foster that, he should have done it when Harry was very young. Instead, he had other priorities. And when those priorities may have shifted to the point of saying, I want to be heavily involved, Harry's already past that point and has already formed his dynamic with his father. You're aloof. I do want you involved, but what evidence, once again, we go back to track record, what evidence would I have to say that you're going to do that? So forget that. Meanwhile, someone like Peter Parker, who has had an incredible amount of loss, who has had surrogates, and is always looking for someone else to foster that in him because of his own sense or lack thereof of self-value. Well, boy, we can go into Peter Parker about that. He'll gladly take it from anywhere. And Norman Osborn sees the scientist in him, sees just the potential, like we said, and he's finally in a position mentally where he's willing to do it. So you have someone who may be more willing and versus someone who's less willing. Subconsciously, I'm not saying that they intentionally would do this, but that's the way it plays out.
Very, very well said. I don't have anything to add or to comment on, so I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to move on to the next one. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is the clear insanity that the Goblin formula created in Norman Osborn's mind. He's driven to constantly attack Spider-Man, and I really hate to bring this up, but it's a part of how the character was written. Dissociative identity disorder. I'm sorry. I had to say it. So many times the writers create the notion that the Goblin is a separate entity within the mind of Norman Osborn.
I swear to God, I am this close to walking out the door.
I didn't write him this way. I didn't call it this. I'm just reflecting on how he's been portrayed in the comics, that the Goblin is a separate entity. I think this was done masterfully in the Raimi films with Willem Dafoe talking to himself in the mirror. that's amazing writing. The movies are very over the top and cartoony, but the way he acts under the influence of the Goblin is stellar.
The 1990s Spider-Man cartoon, I think, does it just as well. They did it a little differently because they introduced Hobgoblin first, and the gas exposed, like, changed the uniform as well as exposing Norman Osborn, and he develops that mind. But they do it very well, too, in terms of the idea that there is something within his head that will not go away that is driving him to act this insane. So no matter what way you look at it, and yes, I am going to just almost ignore the idea that it's dissociative identity disorder, whatever. In all honesty, and even in the comic itself, they've mentioned things like manic depression, which is another way of saying bipolar disorder. Whatever. I'm not trying to put labels on all of it. I think the point that there is a major event that involved chemicals that led to this gentleman having a huge shift in his mindset and how he was able to process reality is important. I think that is something that is relatable to society at large, because there are plenty of people that experience traumatic events. Let's say it's a massive car accident. You end up in the hospital. You have bleeding on your brain. Doctors will sometimes, if necessary, put you into a medically induced coma. It means that they're giving you anesthesia so that your body doesn't go into shock. It basically gives your brain a chance to reset. It allows them to make sure that everything else is working as well as it should for the rest of your body. And then that gets alleviated. Unfortunately, as I've discussed in the Deadpool episode, psychosis is psychosis is psychosis unless it's not. So sometimes when someone has severe medical injuries or gets exposed to certain medications, that can also do it, or illicit substances, so many possibilities, they start to lose touch with reality. Thankfully, it's usually a temporary thing. Norman Osborn wasn't so lucky. His appears to be much more permanent, and I do see cases like that. I'll take it back to something incredibly simple, because right now it's very popular to point out marijuana as being more accepted, legalizing, all of that. I'm not commenting on that itself, but I am pointing out some people have the idea that all things are harmless, and it's not fair, because I have seen people that have used quote-unquote harmless substances that develop hallucinations or severe paranoia or increased disorganization or complete apathy and things like that through no fault of their own. I'm not even saying that they're regularly using those things, but for some reason they had that reaction. And if it's not recognized by the people around them, it creates these symptoms. So it's one thing to say, all right, people should be more accepting of the idea that these things are not as harmful as we think. That's good. But recognizing that everything that we do, everything that we put in our bodies, everything that we expose ourselves to on a regular basis has a certain level of risk, and plan accordingly, that's the better way to go. And I'm not picking on marijuana. I think this is the same, I would say, for alcohol. I would say the same thing for any other illicit substance. I would say the same thing for nicotine. That's perfectly legal. And yet, my goodness, we know the results that can happen with that.
I think you just harshened my buzz. Why you gotta hate on, man? Why you gotta hate on it? I'm just trying to be cool, man. I'm just trying to be cool. Okay, man. All right, man. I can already see. I can see hate mail coming both ways. I can see people saying like, "Well, how dare you marginalize the suffering of people that have serious addiction," and I can also see people saying like what you just did, like, "Dude, why are you knocking weed?" So, oh man, I'm so high right now. So either way, I hope that people listening to this podcast, and I do mean this, I think that all of you are
reasonable people, and I think you realize that there are shades of gray, to go to that trope. It's not an all or nothing situation. I'm saying that you have to keep these things in mind whenever you're doing something, or people around you are doing things. Just be aware of it and act accordingly, as opposed to just blanket statement one way or the other. Don't just say, oh, everything's cool, it's all good. Do as much shrooms as you want.
Everything is awesome.
And on the other hand, you don't have to automatically just staunchly say that people that are using things are absolutely morally bankrupt and evil. Because I think both sides are the pathways that are going to lead to basically less scientific evidence. I love the fact that we're studying these things now in a much more regulated environment. Johns Hopkins is doing research with these different things. And I know it's not directly related to Norman Osborn, but it's still important because that's going to be relevant for all of us. If some of the latest seizure medications are based off of cannabinoid oils, which is basically the chemicals in weed, then that's a wonderful thing, especially for children that suffer from intractable seizures. But I also want to acknowledge that if they're not as effective as we had hoped, that people won't use that as the excuse to say, all right, let me get out my vape pen and just use twice as much because that way I won't have seizures anymore. Follow the evidence, follow the reality. Don't just follow one automatic straw man on one side versus the other.
Well, unfortunately, we've seen in this society that people refuse to let facts get in the way of their narrative, and they get their narrative and then they mold the facts and they cherry pick things to fit whatever story it is that they want because they're not willing to change their core beliefs.
Right.
But I mean, that's another discussion and topic we could have for another time, and it's certainly not fit for this.
Right. And since I didn't actually put it in there, and it's definitely written down, so anybody that looks at the show notes is like, what the heck was Doc Issues thinking? The whole obsession with Spider-Man, I feel, has been done to death because that was our first episode. That was Eddie Brock. There's something about this kid. What is it? You know what? That's a different question. What is it about Spider-Man that gets so many supervillains, so many random females, so many other characters to just target him so hard? What is up with this guy?
I think it's a combination of his charisma. He has an inner charisma, even if he doesn't recognize it. And I think it's the fact that Spider-Man is basically, as he's written, he is the heart of the Marvel Universe, that Peter Parker will always do what is right. He is the heart and soul. And you know, if Peter Parker is on your side, that you're doing the right thing. And conversely, if Peter Parker is against you, you're doing something wrong.
Well,
and I think it boils down to that quite simply. So moving into the treatment in universe, I don't know if you'd want to go Doc Samson on him or...
Well, that's what I was going to say. Doc Samson actually gets a shout out here, and I had said this in previous episodes as well. Anytime I can bring up Doc Samson, it's awesome because he's in the field and he's a superhero. Yay! You know, the gamma radiation probably helps. But anyway, he points out that there's a combination within Norman Osborn between his intelligence, his personality, including some of the antisocial and narcissistic traits, as well as the psychotic part with the goblin. You put all of that together and you end up with one of the most dangerous people in existence. Of course, he used a lot of psychobabble words to describe it because that's what you have to do in literature, I guess, but whatever. I don't think he was that far off in terms of what he was talking about and how he would deal with it. The comics also mention that at some points Norman is on antipsychotics. I think that's reasonable. It shows that he did get better. He was doing better. And it fell apart for other reasons, usually major comic events, as is wont to happen. But that's still totally viable. That's all good with me. Take away the toys, so no glider, no, pumpkin bombs. There's a random part, though, because even when he's in his business suit doing serious business, he had thumb drives that were orange that he would throw that would explode. So he never got away from that. Just as a random aside, those are some cool comic panels to look at. I wish I could tell you which comic issue, but I don't remember which one, but it was funny. Anyway, I think that's okay. I don't think it has to be that complicated. Like, dude, you're doing a lot of wrong stuff. You've got a couple of people that are willing to help you in universe already. I'm just going to add my name to the list as part of the treatment team. I'm not going to make it that complicated. But he's got to do the full package, you know? He has to, first of all, be in a controlled environment. There's no way I'm doing this on a regular couch or anything, you know? So he's got to be in a secure environment. He's got to take the tools in the toolbox seriously. So that is going to include medication. I don't know if anyone's worked on fixing, you know, the original toxins with the gas so that it doesn't happen again. You know, I think that's another part to go with. And then making sure that he doesn't have access to things that are going to instantly trigger his thoughts about the Green Goblin. So, like I said, take the toys away is one thing, but also I'm going to give something that's a little contradictory to what I said in the Eddie Brock episode. He might need to find a way to really stay away from Spider-Man, you know, because that seems to be instant with him. And I'm not so sure, at least with Eddie Brock, he didn't have the resources other than the symbiote itself that Norman Osborn does. Osborn has enough resources where even if he doesn't want to do something in the moment himself, he can get anybody else to do it towards Spider-Man. So he's someone I really do think if it were possible, like, I don't know, block his Twitter feed or something, like just he can't be around him. So move to I don't know, Kamchatka or something. maybe
Irkutsk or one of those other territories I only know thanks to Risk.
Savage Land, there you go.
And it just has to do with Devil Dinosaur and you know, Kazar.
Right.
So out of universe, let's just focus on the or you seem to have an idea already.
Oh my gosh. So I apologize. I'm not going to use names or anything of the sort. I'm just going to point out when I think of certain characters, I think of them, and I've already used the trope serious business, meaning they're CEOs, executives and stuff. You always see them in a suit. They're always going to be the face of the company. Norman Osborn has definitely been portrayed like that, but there are some great art covers of him where he's in that suit, but you can see either in the background or maybe it's a split shot where you get the goblin side and it's just this pure, unadulterated look of evil joy. And I think that's what we're dealing with. Norman Osborn likes to get his hands dirty, and I think the equivalent would be if the CEO of the hospital system I worked for showed up one day, totally random. I mean, just busts in the door, says, "Hey, yeah, Issues, that's your name? Yeah, so I know that our business, our company is looking to really make sure we improve our patient care. So I just went and I invaded the medication cart, and I just gave injections to each of your patients of the best sedative I could find. And it looks like it's taken a lot of effect. But the problem is, since this might be illegal, I'm going to need you to sign off on commitment documents so that they're all deemed to not be able to make their own decisions. And we should be good. And thank you for working for our company. And let's take it from there." In other words, just complete disregard for the patients, complete disregard for me as an employee. You're trying to do my job for me, and you're doing it in a horrible way. I mean, we all like the idea of, if you've ever seen the show like Undercover Boss or something like that, we like the idea that high-level management is going to put themselves in the worker's shoes, you know, or even the employee, or even the customer's shoes, so that they know what the experience is like. But there's a difference between doing that on the basic level so that people know that you care, and just taking over in a very hostile and haphazard way. So that's really what I'm thinking of with someone like Norman Osborn. If we're talking real life, we're talking about almost like a CEO gone rogue, or a CEO that doesn't have control because either emotionally or even, you know, from a psychotic standpoint, they're just not holding things together. So that's what I'm thinking of in terms of a patient that I would be dealing with. And once again, it still comes back to the basics. If the person is out of touch with reality, then we have to use antipsychotics. If the person has severe mood instability to the point that they're not able to function on a daily basis, we have to look at medications that are going to adjust with that. We're going to have to look at medications that help adjust that. In terms of talking to that person, I think we have good examples on how to talk to someone on a level when they have a significant level of narcissism. We've done that with Tony Stark. We've done that the past 2 weeks with Vandal Savage and Ra's al Ghul. We've done that with Loki in terms of him always scheming. So I think we have enough examples of how to handle someone that has a high sense of self-worth. Oh, how could I forget?
Ah, yes.
Yeah. In other words, people, we do this a lot. We talk about this a lot. So that part, once again, you can check the other episodes. The unique part here is when someone is losing touch with reality, but they have a high level, a high position of power, and they're still in that position before anybody has either discovered it or people don't know how to handle it, so they're walking on eggshells. That's the part that becomes way more difficult to deal with, because you have to recognize when you're treating someone like that, you're not just impacting them. You're impacting everyone that works for them. So you have to start making hard decisions. Do you tell them you need to step away from your position? Do you force them to step away from that position? Do you tell them maybe you just need to take more vacation time while we're going through treatment? Do you point out that they can delegate more? Do you have them have their assistant who used to have a minor role take more of a major responsibility? Different ways to play it out. I'm not saying one is more correct than the other, but they all have to be considered at some point. And once again, for safety's sake, if someone clearly is a danger, then I don't care what the headlines are. I don't care what the reporters are going to say. I don't care if people try and get information. It all remains confidential when it comes to the treatment. But that person, they have to go in terms of their employment, in terms of their job. Safety is number one. So if I have to make that decision, then I do.
No way to say it better than that. So I think this is going to be a very interesting portion now. I'm going to pray for you, Doc, and hope that you make it out alive.
Oh, now you started to pray? What were you doing the previous times?
Just kind of wishing and hoping, I guess.
Okay.
Let's see what happens. We get Norman Osborn on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Mr. Osborn. I'm Dr. Issues.
Good afternoon, Doctor. How are you today?
I'm doing just fine. I'm sure you've been briefed on the reason I'm seeing you.
Yes, I'm very excited to put all of this behind me and get back to running my company.
Well, that's quite a big step. I'm not so sure you should jump to that high of a level. Is there a way we can start more gradually?
I'm sure you can appreciate, Doctor. After being CEO of my own company, I'm not entirely interested in taking on a lesser role. I'm certainly not too old to be retired, and while I still have my energy, I want to be as productive as possible.
Oh, I certainly agree that this is a worthwhile goal. I also know that when you push yourself too hard and too fast, no offense, but you become unstable, and I don't think either one of us wants that to happen.
Is it too much to ask that my past mistakes not be repeatedly shoved in my face? I know who I was, and that's not who I am today.
Then who are you?
I'm Norman Osborn. I'm a brilliant scientist. I'm a respected business owner, and I'm former head of national security. My list of accomplishments in life is, well, you know who I am and what I've done. I mean, why should I bother repeating myself? Out
of all those things, I noticed you didn't mention that you're a father.
Oh, well, I mean, obviously I'm a father as well. I mean,
why not talk about Harry? I mean, most parents consider their children to be their greatest achievement.
Yes, I'm very proud of Harry.
And Gabriel and Sarah as well.
You know, I don't care for the direction you're taking this, Doctor.
Look, I'm only asking the basic questions. Imagine the type of scrutiny you'll be under when you're CEO again.
I will be CEO again, and there's nothing you can do to... I'm sorry. I got agitated. Consider it an old habit that's hard to break. I am proud of all of my children in their various endeavors. In fact, I've recently reached out to Gabriel to support him in his treatment because I want him to know that I love him and I miss him and I want to be part of his life again. Just like me, he's going to get better and he's going to return to a normal life.
While that agitation gives me pause, I have to give you credit for using an appropriate coping mechanism.
Thank you, Doctor. I I hope you remember that credit when you sign off on my release.
Wow, I certainly appreciate you cutting to the chase, but we're not there yet, okay? We have to go through this whole process the proper way.
Okay, fine. If that's what it takes, I will continue with the session.
Well, we'll see how this one goes.
This one? Your words imply there could be multiple sessions.
You've been struggling with your condition for quite a long time, and while I understand that you've made so much progress, I want to make sure that I'm not doing this haphazardly. I mean, I'm sure a man of your intelligence and leadership acumen can understand, gathering as much information as possible before I make a final decision.
But you will make a final decision at some point, yes?
Oh, absolutely.
I see. I must confess I'm disappointed to hear this may take longer than I initially anticipated. However, I am willing to fully cooperate with you and all of the authorities in order to clear my good name. So please go ahead and inquire as much as you feel you need to in order to satisfy your curiosity.
That's quite mature of you, and I hope you're able to continue with that attitude because we need to discuss the Green Goblin.
What about it?
Well, how do you control it?
I didn't. That's what led to me being here in the first place. But he has no more control over me. He has been excised from my body and my mind.
So if I hold up a mirror right now, like this, what do you see?
I see that I missed a spot shaving this morning. Chin clefts are always kind of difficult, particularly with an electric razor. They don't trust me with a blade. I'm sure you understand why.
Very good. Okay. I'm also concerned if you're hearing him talk to you.
Not anything new. I will confess, in the interest of full disclosure, that there are echoes of him in my brain from time to time. However, you know how long he was in my head. He's gone, but he'll never truly be gone from me. I kind of equate it to an old relative. You can't speak to them anymore, but you can still hear them in your head. Does anything I'm saying make sense to you, Doctor?
Yes. You know what? Once again, excellent description. So, all right, let's say all of this is under control. What are your goals for your company?
I want us to provide the greatest service to the community that we can, to advance scientific research in new ways to benefit mankind. Mm-hmm. And if I may allow myself some mild self-promotion, to restore my name and goodwill with the public. I don't want my reputation besmirched any further than it has been already.
Interesting. Okay, I thought for sure you were going to mention something about Spider-Man. I mean, you've used your company's resources repeatedly to attack him, right?
Not entirely true, Doctor. The Goblin used my company's resources to attack him. The vendetta with Spider-Man was entirely of the Goblin's doing. Norman Osborn has no bone to pick with him. He does our community a great service.
Ooh, your words sound appropriate, but your tone belies your sincerity.
Again, given the extensive history I have with him, even though I am free of the Goblin's influence, it's difficult to separate his attacks on the Goblin from the attacks on me personally.
Are you trying to imply that you're the ultimate victim here?
I am a victim, though. I was a victim of the Goblin's influence. I was a victim of numerous attacks by Spider-Man. And I'm a victim of your coddling and pedantry, which is disrespectful for a man of my stature.
Norman, I think I'm going to slow this down a little bit because that agitation is coming out again. We may need to discuss medication management at some point.
No drugs. I spent far too long under the influence of the Goblin formula. I'm not about to reintroduce foreign chemicals into my body just so you can keep me docile.
Norman, I want you to be the best businessman you can be. And much like your company, I would prefer if you would allow me to use multiple tools to accomplish that goal.
No, you want to control me. You want the name Osborn, but you're not willing to deal with everything that comes with it. I didn't get to become who I am by sitting back and playing by the rules that others set up. I broke the rules. I made my own path. I made my own name and my own company, and I will not sit by and allow you to deprive me of my freedom and my opportunities any longer. Now, you will grant me my release, you will not prescribe any medications, and you will let me leave this room of my own free will.
Unfortunately, I can't do that.
I'm giving you one last opportunity, Doctor, to cooperate with me, or else I will not be responsible for what happens next.
Well, I will certainly end this session here, because you are responsible whether you blame the Goblin or not.
That's it! Did you make it out of there in time?
Oh, I hauled. Man, I don't hesitate. The second I see or hear someone like that, nah, I'm not staying there.
Yeah, I saw it looked like you ran like a 4/140.
If only I could earn the money associated with that.
Yeah, that would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, because even if I got in trouble, I'm pretty sure I get another chance, right?
Well played. Well stated. So that's just going to about wrap it up for this week's episode. Next week, Wolverine.
Wow.
He is the best at what he does, but what he does is going to take a really long time to describe. So I anticipate this is going to be a lengthy one.
I don't know what you're talking about, bub.
Snicked. So after Wolverine, it's Molecule Man. So once again, our present level patrons have selected two very intriguing characters for us to talk about because Owen Reese has a litany of issues.
Yeah, I'm going to have a little trouble piecing that one together.
I think it's going to, we could break it down though, really parse it apart.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you sure we're going to get the right combination? Yeah.
I think if we pull them apart, we can put them back together pretty well.
Okay.
We'll break down the bonds. There are numerous science jokes there. Science! And then the following week, we go from the ultimate scientist to the magic man, Doctor Strange.
Hey. Remember, before all the magic and stuff, surgeon.
This is true. Was a surgeon. I feel like there's so much of this that's, and I don't say this in necessarily a disparaging fashion, but there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be repeated from the Tony Stark episode.
Quite possibly. Yes.
Maybe not the alcoholism, but certainly the arrogance and a lot of those issues.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And facial hair bros.
Well, there's a great, if you ever find the GIF file of it, of old-fashioned comic characters where they just take the same male template and just add different colors and you get almost every character in history.
Didn't know that. I haven't seen that one. I'm also a little perturbed by your definition of GIF.
Oh my God, we're not going to have this battle too. We don't have time for this, man. The person that created it called it GIF.
It's not graphics, it's graphics. Anyway, and you can send us your thoughts on whether it's a hard G or a soft G. capesonthecouch@gmail.com. You can tweet us, Capes on the Couch. You can also tweet me at Anthony Sitko or Doc at Doc Issues. You can check out our Facebook page. We just put up a Facebook group, so we're expanding that slowly but surely for all the fans who want to have a place to talk about episodes. There'll be, links to all the episodes in the group itself. Another way you can contact us or get in touch with us is through our Patreon. As we said, it's the $1, $3, $5, and $10 levels. You can go to patreon.com/capesonthecouch and find out more. If you want to support the show, which we certainly appreciate, you can check out this show and all of our episodes at our website, capesonthecouch.live, on Google, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. We are now officially on Spotify, so you can check us out if you're streaming your media as you are wont to do in 2018. So there are numerous ways. And if you are on a platform that allows you to like, subscribe, and leave a review, please do that because that helps spread the word of Capes on the Couch and gets more people to listen to us. So it's not just me tweeting random folks and saying, hey, check out our show. We analyze these psychiatric and mental health issues of comic book characters, which is what I am doing. #podcast recommendations. So Doc, anything you want to add? Anything, last little bits you want to close with on Norman Osborn?
Halloween is awesome. It's a great time of year. You get to spend time with children that are allowed to see strangers in a different light and not immediately be threatened.
Tell them they can read To Kill a Mockingbird and read about Boo Radley if they want to read about treating someone differently. It's okay to do that outside of Halloween. The only good thing Halloween brings is candy corn and apple cider.
Wow, you are just digging yourself deeper, man.
I listen, you know me a long time. I have set my position. I'm not changing.
If there's one thing that this proves is that no, we don't immediately think alike on everything. And yes, we are able to disagree with each other civilly, even when it's very clear how wrong someone like Anthony can be.
I'm just going to leave that one alone. For my very, very wrong co-host, Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.